Principle number 10 is tonal centers. Now, what is a tonal center? Well, a tonal center is where your ear hears a resolution point, whether that's a chord progression or whether that's a melody or a riff or a lick. Okay? Now, of course, we've built our chords now, so we can build chord progressions. And a progression is a string of chords that are put together to create a harmonic progression, if you like, or a groove. So what we do is we can build these chord progressions using the chords that we've built from the G major scale or any other key for that matter. All right, and that's going to give us, the basis for our songs and any music that we put together. Now, we can resolve to the first chord in that key if we want to. We can play G, D, C, for example, and resolve back to the G. But not all of our progressions are always going to do that. Because we have 7 chords and 7 positions within our scale, we can actually resolve our chord progressions to any point within the scale. So any of those 7 places. Now, those positions are often referred to as modes or modal progressions. And all that means is that you're resolving to somewhere other than the first note or first chord of the key. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. And of course, I've given you killer tracks that you can play over as well, with each of those modes, tonal centers, all right, that you can get the understanding or full understanding of. So we're going to pull up the first track, which will be the first mode or first tonal center in the G major scale, which is G Ionian, all right, which means my chord progression that I'm creating is going to be played through using chords from the key of G, resolving to the chord of G. All right, so let's pull up that first track. I'll play it a little bit, and then I'm going to break that down for you so you have a full understanding. Here we go. Our first chord progression here with the tonal center of the one chord, G, is called Ionian, all right? So our modes and our tonal centers are one and the same thing. Now let's qualify why that resolves back to that first chord in the key of G. Let's look at the progression on the fretboard. So here we have a G5 chord. As we know, we've got our power chords as well as our triads and our 7th. So G, then I played a G with a B bass, so we've got a nice slash chord thing there. Then we have a C, and that's a C5-2 chord, to a D with an F sharp bass. Now, using your ear, can you determine where that resolves to? Well, to me, resolves nicely back to our first chord. So the tonal center, because it resolves to the first chord in the key, is going to be a G Ionian. All right, now that's our tonal center. All right, so that qualifies what a tonal center is. It's where your ear hears the resolution of the chord progression or a melody or a riff or a lick. Okay, now let's qualify the next one. We're going to move up the scale now, and I'm going to give you a tonal center that resolves to the second chord in our key, which by now you should be going, well, that's A minor, right? Well, yes. But I'm going to play you a chord progression so you can hear how that sounds and why you would determine that that was a second tonal center or a different tonal center other than the one, all right? So let's pull up that track. I'm going to play it a little bit for you, and then I'll break it down, and then you can get busy looking at the other progressions I've given you and figuring out why the tonal center is what it is. Okay, let's pull up that other track. Let me qualify now to you the chords that I played and tell you what the tonal center is. You probably already know, but let's go through that. Our first chord, I was playing a really nice voicing for an A minor 9 chord here. So that was my first chord of the progression. Then I played a C to a D. So we had. Then I go back to A minor. Then I played a G5 to a D with an F sharp bass. Okay. Now all of these chords are coming from the G major scale, so there's nothing coming from anywhere else, right? So okay, now I can hear that that resolves nicely to that 2 chord, the second chord in the key of G. That means my tonal center is that of the second chord. Now the second mode, or the second tonal center in the key of G, is A, all right, or A minor. So we've got a Dorian being the second mode, progression here, or a tonal center of the 2 chord, which is A Dorian, all right, which means all of the chords that we were using to create that chord progression, play the chord progression, resolved nicely and squarely back to the second chord. So it wasn't the first chord at all, albeit that we derived all of our chords from that G major scale. We resolved to a different point within the G major scale. That's what tonality is, and that's what a tonal center is. So hopefully that's clarified that for you. There are 5 more tracks. Obviously there are 7 tonal centers within a 7-note scale. Obviously it resolves to each of any of those chords. Okay, so take a look at the diagrams, pull up the tracks, look at the chord progressions on the charts, and follow through the progression. Play them if you want to as well, and get a full understanding of why they are tonal centers within the key of G. All right, very good.